Hello, this is Neville Buchanan with the Summit Church of Christ in Cold Spring, Kentucky with today's daily devotion. Don't fear the cost of discipleship. When sending his disciples out, Jesus warned them in Matthew chapter 10, verses 24 through 42, of three things they should not fear, and we'll briefly look at these. Over the years, polls have shown us that the fear of death is the second biggest fear humans have. The greatest fear is the fear of public speaking. Yet I would suggest that Christians have an even greater fear, and that is the fear of sharing the gospel with their friends. I want you to imagine for a moment, that you have a friend, your best friend, who's dying of cancer. Moments before that friend dies, that friend realizes that you all these years have had the cure for cancer, and you have withheld that cure. You could have diagnosed it, and you could at any time have administered that cure. Well, friend, in a much more severe and much more realistic fashion, your friends, your best friends, will find out that you had the cure not of cancer, but of an eternal cancer. You could have prevented them from contracting the spiritual disease called sin, intentionally withholding the diagnosis of this cure, which is Jesus Christ, from the spiritually lost and dying world. Could there be any excuse for something like this? Let's look at the three reasons why people do not share this good news. First, Jesus says expect persecution from strangers. And so we don't share this good news because we know strangers will persecute us. Yet Jesus says, do not fear. We are his disciples and he is our teacher. He says in verse 24, a disciple is not above his teacher, and we are his servants and he is our master. He says, nor a servant above his master, and in verse 25, it is enough for a disciple to be like his teacher and the servant like his master. And then thirdly, don't fear because we are of his household and he is the master of our household. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they malign those of his household? This past week, Lebanese TV station LBCI is adding the Arabic letter N or Nun to its name in solidarity with Iraqi Christians who are being persecuted for their faith by the jihadist terrorist group is in this Islamic State. Supporters of the Christians on social media adopted the Arabic N as a symbol after the Islamic State terrorists used it to mark the homes of Christians in Mosul. This letter stands for Nazarenes, and it allows anybody that the government places this nun on to demolish and loot Christian homes. So the news outlet Naharnet reports that Al-Qidi had to explain to viewers that she had not converted. She said, and I quote, I'm not an apostate. In other words, she says, I'm not a Christian. I'm not an apostate, but I'm not with those killing Christians in my name. We called for wearing the cross to express our rage over the rejection of these oppressive approaches. She added that she sees herself as an Iraqi first and a Sunni Muslim second. Can you imagine that persecution being so bad in this current state that even those who are not Christians would stand up for Christians? Second reason why we don't want to spread the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ is because of persecution from the government. But Jesus says, don't fear this, because light conquers darkness. So have no fear of them, for nothing is covered that will not be revealed, nor hidden that will not be made known. What I tell you in the dark, say in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim on the housetops. Also life conquers death. And do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. And finally, love conquers all. Are not two sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. But even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, you are of more value than many sparrows. Now notice, first of all, no fear is mentioned in each one of these sections. No fear because of light conquers darkness, no fear because life conquers death, and no fear because love conquers all. Look at these sparrows, little tiny sparrow, sold for so little, yet God knows all about this little sparrow. He is a very loving God and will not allow us to be eternally damned if we would stand up for him. In AD 64, someone set fire to the city of Rome, and the rumor quickly spread that Nero had burned down 3/4 of Rome because he wanted the city named after himself. And so, seeking a scapegoat, he used the name Christian. And he blamed this all on Christians, even to the extent of having Christians light up his palace by burning them on the torch, or placing them in these big colosseums and having them ripped to pieces by wild animals. Even in our day and age, we can see the persecution as our courtrooms are filled at the end of the year with the not so merry sounds of lawyers arguing about whether nativity scenes violate somebody's civil rights or whether Christmas carols may be sung at a school concert. How ridiculous! But that is the signs of our times. And then thirdly, expect persecution from family. But don't fear this, because we are acknowledged before his Father. Verse 32, so everyone who acknowledges me before men, I also will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven. And also we are on the right side of the sword. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. And, verse 35, we are not God's enemies. For I have come to set a man against his father, and a daughter against his mother, and a father-in-law against his mother-in-law. A person's enemies will be those of his own household. Friend, do you have your own family turning against you because of your belief in Christ? If not, it might be that you're not talking out. You might not be talking out against governmental leaders in places where you need to speak up. You might not be talking up to strangers in different places where you would meet the stranger of your belief in Jesus Christ. You having the cure of the disease, the cure being Christ, the disease being sin, and you're not speaking up. How could this be? Friend, have you ever wondered why there's a stairway going to heaven and a highway going to hell? I submit to you that it has something to do with the traffic. You and I have an obligation. And yes, it's becoming to the point of being ridiculous. One day you might even be persecuted for eating meat. But at that day I would tongue-in-cheek remind you, vegetarian is an old Indian word for a bad hunter. Friend, don't be worried about the persecution of this world. It will come. Expect this persecution. If you are part of Christ, you will understand persecution. In the words of Amy Carmichael, who many years ago wrote a beautiful poem, Hast Thou No Scar? Let us end. Hast thou no scar? No hidden scar or foot or side or hand? I hear thee sung as mighty in the land. I hear them hail thy bright ascendant star. Hast thou no scar? Hast thou no wound? Yet I was wounded by archers, spent, leaned me against a tree to die, and rent by ravening beasts that compassed me, I swooned. Hast thou no wound? No wound, no scar? Yet, as the master shall be the servant, as the master shall the servant be, and pierced are the feet that follow me. But thine are whole. Can he have followed far who hast no wound or scar? Friend, God bless you as you walk the path that Jesus Christ has determined for you to walk.